Rumbi wondered if something was wrong with her husband. Curious, she squinted her eyes and peeped through the window of the hut and saw what her eyes should never have seen. "Ah!" she exclaimed. Immediately, Ajala's mother flew out of the hut to face Rumbi, who stood in front of the hut with tears in her eyes and hands on her head. "What do you think you are doing?" Rumbi asked the woman. "I was just breastfeeding my son. This is why we share this uncommon bond that you girls want to break. This is an abomination. How can you be breastfeeding a grown man? You are a very wicked woman. The entire village must hear this," Rumbi exclaimed. By this time, Ajala was already outside the hut, completely indifferent about what had happened. Ajala's mother beat her chest as she faced Rumbi. "I am my son's wife. The day you let another ear hear this thing, that day you and your family will die. Nobody can take my son from me, not even you." Rumbi broke down in tears. She was hurt, pained, and broken. Rumbi was easily one of the prettiest ladies in the village. Her parents, who were farmers, were proud of her beauty. Her father would always brag about the beauty of his daughter, and sometimes he would earn free palm wine at the village square, brought by the men who wanted him to be their in-law. Rumbi continued to catch the fancy of every young and old man in the village. In fact, it was once rumored that the king once thought about marrying her as his fifth wife. But as fate would have it, he fell sick and was unable to marry a new wife. Meanwhile, Rumbi wasn't only beautiful, she was a good matchmaker and also a good singer. Each time Rumbi wove her mats in the market, she would begin to sing, and almost all the men who had gone to the market to either sell their wares or buy goods would stop by her shop to purchase her newly woven mats while they watched her sing. With time, Rumbi became not just famous, but also rich. Meanwhile, in another part of the village lived a furniture maker called Ajala. Ajala was a good-looking man who was also one of the most eligible bachelors in the village. He was one of the few young men who was good with their skill, quick to work, and fast to build a house that accommodated both him and his mother, as his father had died a long time ago. But Ajala had a problem that all his friends were aware of. The problem was that he could not make decisions on his own. Ajala was not just a mommy's boy. His mother had a hand in what he did, what he ate, what he wore, and even who he must marry. In fact, one of the reasons why Ajala was still single and unmarried at 40 was because his mother rejected the 5 ladies he had brought home. His mother told him that the first one was too skinny for him, the second one was from a poor home, and that the third one wouldn't bear beautiful children because she was ugly. The last lady that Ajala brought home was a fashion designer. Ajala was so much in love with the fashion designer that everyone thought that they were going to get married. But after he brought the fashion designer home to meet his mother, Ajala's mother refused. She claimed that the fashion designer was too fat to become his wife. Because of this, Ajala was always lonely and unhappy. The only time he was happy was when he was in the company of his friends in the village square, drinking palm wine after the day's work. His mother tried all she could to make her son happy, but to no avail. Ajala remained moody during the day and happy only at night. Meanwhile, Rumbi's father met a businessman who had come from the far north to get goods from the west. The man had fallen in love with Rumbi at first sight, the moment she served him some food at her father's hut. Immediately, the man promised to give Rumbi's father some gold just to have his daughter as his wife. Her father was happy. The moment the businessman left, he called his daughter and wife to share the good news with them. But Rumbi refused to stay till the end of the meeting. She told her father that she would never marry an old man. Her father made it clear to her that the businessman wasn't that old, but she refused to listen. It was Rumbi's wish to marry a fine young man like her mates, not an old man who was old enough to become her father. Rumbi's parents pleaded with her day after day, but she refused. She maintained her stand not to marry an old man who would treat her like a daughter instead of a wife. One day, Rumbi needed some wood for her new mat design, so she went with her friend Shade to the furniture maker's shop. It was while they were on their way that Shade began to tell her to think about the businessman and reconsider him. "But I don't love him," she stressed. "Love grows with time, Rumbi," Shade explained. But Rumbi didn't want a love that grows. She wanted a love at first sight. When they arrived at the furniture maker's shop, Ajala came out to attend to them. While attending to them, he took notice of Rumbi. Immediately, his breath caught and his world seemed to stand still briefly. Ajala had heard about Rumbi's beauty, but he had never seen her up close. He was still admiring her long black hair and long lashes when Shade snapped him back into reality. He didn't even try to cover his longing gaze as he watched her all through that afternoon. He also observed that Rumbi seemed to share a similar feeling with him, going by the way she smiled shyly and almost forgot to pay her money before leaving with her friend. That night, when Ajala got back home, he couldn't control his joy. His mother noticed that he didn't only eat his food, but he also sat down to talk about this mystery girl all night. Ajala's mother was curious. She wanted to know who had stolen her son's heart and made him so happy. And so the next day she set out into the village to look for Rumbi. Ajala's mother, through the help of some village people, told her all that she needed to know about Rumbi, her parents and her maths business. But Ajala's mother wasn't satisfied and was very sad. She wanted to see who this girl was. She wanted to put an end to such a relationship before her son brought her home. She was afraid that if her son fell completely in love with the girl, he would have no time for her and she would lose him. She wanted her son to herself. She didn't want any of those stupid young ladies to put an end to the sacred bond that they shared. So she sat behind the big oak tree close to the market. Someone had told her that it would be easy to know Rumbi when she saw her because of her beauty. She waited that morning, eager to see the beautiful damsel that everyone had called her. Not too long after, she settled to sit and wait for Rumbi to pass by. Rumbi passed by the oak tree with a man carrying some of her mats on his head. Ajala's mother's jaw dropped open in surprise. She was surprised that such a beautiful damsel was still unmarried in the village. But something else flowed into her mind the moment she saw her walk elegantly towards her shop. Ajala's mother knew what it was. It was hatred. She began to wish that Rumbi was not beautiful. She wished that something would suddenly happen to her to spoil her beauty. Ajala's mother became angry as she walked back home that day. Why would God give her such beauty? Why didn't her parents give her tribal marks? Ajala's mother was pained. She couldn't eat. In fact, she couldn't sleep that night. She needed a plan fast because she wanted to be sure that no one would take her son from her. A few days later, Ajala told his mother his intentions to marry Rumbi. "Don't you think it's too fast?" she asked. "I'm in love with Rumbi. I feel like if I don't marry her, I might just die," he said. Ajala's mother realized there was no how she could convince her son about Rumbi that he would listen. So she did what came to her mind. She told her son that she would help him talk to her parents and marry her for him. Ajala was very excited. He told his friends his mother's intention and they congratulated him. But they all prayed that Rumbi would accept Ajala's marriage proposal. Meanwhile, Rumbi continued to reject the businessman's marriage proposal until Ajala's mother met and told them of her son's intention to marry. Rumbi agreed eagerly, but her parents and her friend Shade were a bit skeptical about her response. "You don't even know this man," Shade said to Rumbi 2 nights before the wedding ceremony. "You worry a lot, my friend. I'll get to know him in marriage, don't worry," Rumbi replied. "I have heard lots of stories about this man. I heard his mother controls him," Shade stressed. Rumbi laughed. "His mother practically loves me. People will say lots of things. I don't believe in rumors, Shade." Shade kept short after that and decided to respect her friend's wishes. But it was obvious that Rumbi wasn't aware that she was playing with fire and that the rumors were true. The wedding day came by and passed in a blow. There was plenty to eat and drink at the venue. Ajala's mother bought the most expensive palm wine just to entertain guests at her son's wedding. Soon, when it was night, Ajala's mother announced that it was time to take their wife home. Rumbi felt sad. She was on the verge of tears the moment she saw her friend Shadi wave her goodbye. Now she was all alone with a strange man whom she had come to love, his mother. Nevertheless, Rumbi remembered what her mother had told her concerning marriage. Her mother had advised her to be respectful to both her husband and mother-in-law. She prayed within her that God would help her to please her husband and mother-in-law. But something strange happened the moment they got to Ajala's house. The mother separated them. Rumbi didn't understand her reason for this decision, so she decided to question her since it was her wedding night. Mother, it's my wedding night. Tradition demands that my husband fulfills his marital right to me tonight. Ajala's mother broke into a wicked laugh. Hey, you must be joking. Welcome to the real world, Rumbi. This is my house, and you will do as you are told. You are only married to my son because I permitted him. I make all the rules here. Rumbi couldn't believe her ears. Surely the rumors weren't true, right? Or was she having a bad dream? What do you mean, ma? I mean, in this house, we have a tradition. And the tradition is that I must sleep between the both of you on the same bed for 7 days. After 7 days, you can have your husband to yourself, she concluded, and went into the house. That night, Rumbi didn't sleep on the bed with them. Rather, she stayed outside the house crying until she fell asleep. What bothered her more by the following day was that her husband, Ajala, didn't see anything wrong with what his mother had told her. It's an abomination for your mother to sleep in our room on our wedding night, she told her husband, as she served him some food the following day. If you can't handle it, maybe you should return to your father's house, Ajala replied coldly. This was not the Ajala she had fallen in love with. Rumbi was hot. She also knew that something was wrong with both mother and child. Every night she would watch Ajala's mother call him to the room they were all supposed to share, and they would go to sleep as though she never existed. On some days, when Rumbi got Ajala's attention, his mother would jealously call him to massage her back or feed her. Rumbi knew that it was strange, but she didn't know who to confide in. She couldn't tell her parents, neither could she tell her friend Shadi. She didn't want to be nicknamed by the entire community as a beautiful lady who couldn't keep a husband. Who would believe her story? What would she do? She pondered. However, she waited to see what would eventually happen on the 7th day. She was supposed to spend the 7th night with her husband just like his mother told her. So she waited until the 7th day. But that night, as Ajala and his mother entered the hut to sleep, Rumbi felt uncomfortable. She wanted to know what mother and child were talking about because she heard some noise coming from the hut. So Rumbi left her side of the hut and tiptoed to Ajala's mother's hut to see what was going on. As she drew close, she realized that it was only Ajala's mother's noise that she heard. Rumbi wondered if something was wrong with her husband. Curious, she squinted her eyes and peeped through the window of the hut and saw what her eyes should never have seen. Ah! She exclaimed. Immediately, Ajala's mother flew out of the hut to face Rumbi, who stood in front of the hut with tears in her eyes and hands on her head. What do you think you are doing? Rumbi asked the woman. I was just breastfeeding my son. This is why we share this uncommon bond that you girls want to break. This is an abomination. How can you be breastfeeding a grown man? You are a very wicked woman. The entire village must hear this, Rumbi exclaimed. By this time, Ajala was already outside the hut, completely indifferent about what had happened. Ajala's mother beat her chest as she faced Rumbi. I am my son's wife. The day you let another hear this thing, that day you and your family will die. Nobody can take my son from me, not even you. Rumbi broke down in tears. She was hot, pained and broken. If only she had married a northern businessman, maybe she wouldn't have landed into fire in Ajala's house. When it became clear that Ajala's mother was indeed her son's wife, Rumbi withdrew and became a shadow of herself. She didn't flash back a smile to everyone who greeted her. And she was always absent-minded each time Shadi came around to gist with her. Everyone knew that something was wrong with her, but Rumbi dared not speak about it to anybody. But one day, when she went to the other village to get some materials for her maths business, Rumbi met an old man who also traveled to the neighboring village to get some materials for his maths business. As they kept talking, Rumbi narrated her ordeal to the old man. The old man told Rumbi what to do to break that abominable bond between her husband and his mother. Your mother-in-law has an unhealthy bond with her son, and she feels threatened by her son's wife or his friends. You need to take quick steps to help that young man, the man said. But how can I help him when he doesn't want to be helped? Rumbi asked. He is helpless. He doesn't know he even needs the help to break out of his mother's selfish web. You need to save him before he drowns, the old man said. Rumbi went back home thinking about what the old man had said. So she decided to give it a try to rescue Ajala from the hands of his wicked mother. First, she became friends with his mother even though it was difficult for her and made her skin crawl. Then she ensured to always cook Ajala's meals earlier than his mother. And then at night she would tell her husband to feed from her breast instead, as she was his rightful wife. She did this for 7 days and began to notice that Ajala began to decline his mother's ideas, offers and food. Instead, Ajala began to prioritize his wife's ideas. He began to go on long strolls with his wife instead of his mother, and Ajala's mother became bitter again. One night, after Ajala traveled to the neighboring village to supply furniture to a customer, Ajala's mother went to Rumbi's hut and shook her awake. Then she told Rumbi, Look, I am my son's first wife. No one can take my place. If you try to do so, I'll kill you, she threatened. At first, Rumbi was scared, then she remembered the old man's advice. She jumped down from the bed and faced Ajala's mother. And I am legally married to your son, who is now my husband. No one can take my place. You are his mother, not his wife. Your selfish hold over him is broken as from today, and everybody will see your secret. Ajala's mother was scared, but she didn't show it. Rumbi had grown wings, but she snapped her fingers at Rumbi and began to prepare her next step. That afternoon, when Ajala came back from his trip, Rumbi decided to take him to the village square to eat some bushmeat. His mother was not aware. Instead, she prepared some meals for her son. She was certain that her next plan would certainly work. But unfortunately, there was an emergency in her friend's house. Her friend's daughter was having a hard labor, so she rushed out of the hut the moment her friend came to call her. By the time Ajala and Rumbi returned home, it was already late in the evening. When Rumbi saw that Ajala's mother had cooked for him and dished it in different bowls, she brought the bowl of food meant for Ajala and ate it with him. Then she transferred the other food meant for her into Ajala's bowl, covered it, and went to sleep. It wasn't until a sharp noise woke Rumbi and Ajala up from sleep that they realized that Ajala's mother was the one in deep pain. By the time they rushed into her hut, they saw Ajala's mother on the ground, groaning in pain, crying as words of regret flew out of her lips. Ah, she said. Ajala was scared. He had never seen his mother in such a state. Rumbi, on the other hand, wondered what was wrong. It's like I've mistakenly eaten the poison food I left for you today. Please forgive me, she cried, groaning in pain, and then gave up the ghost. Ajala cried, but Rumbi didn't cry. The old man was correct. Ajala's mother would have stopped at nothing to ensure she always stayed glued to her son. Rumbi came to know in the weeks that followed that she was her husband's saving grace. In the weeks and months that followed, she watched her husband grow into a successful furniture maker, expanding further into the north and the east. When Rumbi became pregnant, and it was clear that she might be carrying a boy child, she made up her mind that she was only going to have a healthy mother-to-born child. not a selfish woman.